But for me, a leader is about somebody who steps up and doesn't wait for permission, is authentic as well and has integrity. If you've got integrity, if you're authentic and you're stepping up, then you're a leader. My name is Akeela Ahmed. I'm a social entrepreneur, businesswoman, and government advisor. I've been an activist for about 20 years in the Muslim communities on gender and anti-Muslim hatred. I actually studied physics at university, but while I was at uni, even though I was still enjoying the subject, I just found it was so far removed and I really felt like I wanted to give something back with my life. So then when I left university, I started working part-time in housing with refugees and asylum seekers and homeless people. And then it was when I did my master's in mental health studies that I sort of started to understand that if you're from a BME background and you're female and you're Muslim, then you're actually quite likely to suffer with a mental health problem. But this was something that just wasn't spoken about. I then started working with the Muslim Youth Helpline, and for me it was just really important that young people had that space where they could just be and they didn't have to explain. When I became Chief Executive of the Muslim Youth Helpline, I think I was lucky in that the people I'd worked with were quite supportive. I dedicated a lot of time to the organisation because I was just passionate. Felt like young Muslims really needed something like that. They needed a space where they would be understood, but then they wouldn't be judged. Mainstream mental health services, and I think they're a lot better now, are understanding Muslims and actually seeing that Islam and Quran can be a force for good in people's lives and can help them overcome like whatever mental health issue they're dealing with. But there's still this gap. After I left there, I also had 2 children and then I was pregnant with my third, so I wanted to do something that would give me flexibility to be at home with my children but then also work, because I kind of felt like I would go crazy if I didn't have the ability to work. I felt that running my own business would be the way to go. After an initial startup for about a year, it's now been running nearly 2 years, and it's basically a homelessness project, providing accommodation to people homeless with mental health difficulties. Important part of that process was talking to people, also having confidence and conviction in my own abilities and gut feeling as well, because there were some people saying no, you don't need to do this, or you can't do it, or you have to think about X, Y and Z. And sometimes the best way to do things is to go ahead and do it and then learn as you go along. It's really important to just own your own narrative. Seeing in the media Muslim women talked about but never actually hearing their voices. And then when you do hear Muslim women's voices, it was always in the context of extremism, battling some sort of oppression, which is real, like FGM, domestic violence. These are real things that happen and they need to be tackled. But we'd only hear Muslim women talk in these binary categories. And I just wanted real Muslim women's voices to get heard and get out there. So I set up She Speaks We Hear to bring together a diverse range of women's voices, but people who wouldn't necessarily write about their thoughts or write about their experiences. And I'm just happy to be able to give people a platform. Don't allow other people to speak for you. So I'm on the government's working group, which is a task force, which was set up to tackle anti-Muslim hatred, populated by government departments, and then independent members are sort of experts, also community activists. And I'm chair of the independent members, so we work with government on different areas to try and tackle anti-Muslim hatred, and I think that's important as well for communities to know that there is that sense within government that Islamophobia is wrong and that it won't be tolerated, and they've spoken in the strongest terms about it. Like, I've had people tell me that I can't be English even though I've said that I'm born here. It doesn't make a difference, I'm still foreign. But I think that's why work like your project, my project She Speaks We Hear, and Amaliah, where people are owning their own narratives, they're getting their voices out there, I think that's really, really important. And I think it's great that now we've got the technology to do that and bypass mainstream media. Islamophobia is increasing, and the responsibility for tackling it can't just be on Muslims. So it's really important to not only get your voices out there, but to make connections and build bridges with people from other communities, because actually then when you start talking to people outside of your own silo, you find that some of the experiences and challenges that you're dealing with are really similar, and then you can actually campaign on the same issue together, and more voices are stronger and better. It's important to remember that there are other minority groups who are also dealing with similar issues. I found when I spoke at the Women's March. Inspirational because it was just a whole host of people from so many different backgrounds and walks of life who came together, and they focused on making sure that their voices were heard, and with the prospect of Trump coming in and Trump then systematically reducing people's right to exist, whether they were Mexican or they were Muslim or whatever, for so many people to come together was really, really amazing. With anything you want to change or achieve, you have to put in a lot of hard work. But before you do that, you've got to do your research and then just start planning, start mapping out a little bit what are the key steps you're going to do. Now, I'm not one of those people who'll sit down with like Gantt charts and whatever. I'm one of those people who kind of just map it out in my head. I think breaking it down into bite-sized chunks in whichever way that you want to do it is really useful. And then after you've taken one step, look at it as an achievement. Think about what you had originally planned as your next step and whether it still makes sense to do that as the next step. And nobody's going to tell you it's okay, you're doing well, or you can do this. If you've got a goal in mind or something that you want to do, whether it's a career choice or it's a project that you want to start, you've got to just go away and do it. I've not done anything special, honestly. I've had opportunities, I've tried to make the most of them, but I've not done anything special at all. Anybody can do what I've done and probably do it 10 times better as well.